So if we're going to remove the grill, we have to remove a few trim pieces first. First trim piece we're going to remove is going to be this underneath the headlights. 7mm. Grab these bolts. So this piece is just going to pop off. We already did the other side. It's going to be similar. And from here, all right, so we've exposed all the additional bolts for the grill here. Oops, sorry, my watch is in focus here. This is the headlight. You can see there's nothing really down here except for this last one right there. We'll remove this trim piece next. So these are two pieces. See a little notch here where you can put a little flathead screwdriver in. That way they go back in. The inside piece spreads out the outside piece, which enables the thing to hold. So I use the edge of the trim tool, kind of prop this up a little bit, do the inside, then underneath, and do the outside or the lower piece. We'll do the same thing over here. So this piece is just going to pull up now. Just a floppy piece, I'll set that on the ground. Now I have access to everything I need. Might want a flathead screwdriver for that, but it's not a huge deal. Okay, so I know you can't see this. Let me see if I can get you in here. So this piece, see how it's elliptical? When you want to take that piece out, you want to squeeze it so it becomes a circle-ish, and then this will pop out. Now this is your fluid for your if you have a Platinum Limited. I don't know what the other trims have, but there's a piece right here. This comes out and it washes your camera. So that's the fluid for that. All right, now that everything else is removed, I'm gonna remove these bolts. They look to be 10 mil, 10 mil, 10 and 10. And I should be able to remove the grill after I take these bolts out. So here's the new grill. Notice that it doesn't have any of the camera, the window, the washer motor. It doesn't have any of that. And I'll show you where that goes in a second. The actual vented part of the grill and the frame of the grill is already together. Another thing to note is these retained bolt are already on there. And the last thing is these clips also are already on here. Now, the way that this looks, this is what the grill that comes off looks like. So you have, this is the camera connection. This is a little pump motor, I think, for the water. This is for your washer. And this is what we talked about, where you have to squeeze this off and do a circle to get it off. And the last thing here is your camera connection. This clip is a bit different. It's a little bit malformed. I used a body clip remover to pull it out, but it is what it is. And then this is the separation. These are the vent shutters. So this part actually needs to separate from here in order to replace it. These retained bolts, again, are already on the new one. These metal clips are already on the new one, which is great. The big difference is, or there's really no difference, sorry, but you take these bolts out. Those are where the nuts go on top of this. So you have to take those out on each side. You're also gonna have to remove the cables from here. And you're gonna need to pull the hood. The hood stop bumps is what I call them. I know there's an official hood stop, a name for them. This is what they look like. Oops. And they fit in here. These are really easy to get out. You don't need to use the trim tool on the bottom part, only on the top part. So just pull it out and it'll physically pull out by hand and go back in really easily. You don't need to mess with it too much. So I'm gonna swap these parts over. Looks to be Torx 25, 27, maybe a 30, I don't know, I haven't checked yet. Torx here, Torx back in here to replace that and put it into the other one. So I'm gonna take this out. When I'm ready to put in the other one, I will show you how to do that. Okay. So I removed all of this. The way that this looks, this is how it looked like from above. You have the camera set in here. This is where the new piece or the old piece came from, the new piece goes. This is the little cover that goes onto the emblem on the front that pops out and washes this camera. So in order to take this off, all I did was use a trim tool and I just pried this out just a little bit and the old one comes off. Now be careful not to break it, because if you break it, you have to buy a new piece or do some magical fixing work with glue, plastic weld, whatever you want to do. So I'm gonna move the camera and I'll show you how to put it back in this grill. Okay, so this is really hard to get a picture of, get a video of. A couple things I'm gonna do. I think that's from painting. This little piece right here, I'm gonna pop this out and I'll actually show it to you. It's taped up here, but this is what the back looks like. Literally just pops right in there. So I'm gonna do this last because the whole thing needs to be on before I do it. So let's put the camera and the spray motor back in there. Oh, and it was a Torx 25. The ones that came out are T25. All right, so I recommend putting this one in first. It sits slightly below there. It'll help you index it and get it tightened down. Don't tighten it down, but it'll index it and let it get it in there so you can line up the rest. When you put this in here, it really has a specific place it wants to go in order to line the camera up. So you can see the one on the left is lined up here. This one is starting to line up, and this is already pushed out. So what I'm going to try and do is get my Milwaukee on here, get my Torx bit in there, and just very lightly, well, I'm going to turn it the right direction first. Just very lightly get it tight. So it's caught, it's still loose, I can still move it around, and I'm going to tighten the rest up. You can see how this one doesn't really line up, and now it does. So I'm just going to set this in here and I'm going to tighten it down, and then there's one on the other side that does the same. So I'm going to turn this off and do this and show you the end. Okay, so again, I'm going to put that trim piece on the edge of this motor sprayer here in very last, but I have the 3 bolts on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire assembly and I'm going to reaffix it back to the rest of the grill assembly. And I'll get that set up and then I'll show you. So that just sets in there. One thing I'm gonna do real quick, don't forget you have this, you have your camera in there, right? So I'm gonna make sure that those get lined up. These, there's not a trim piece there, but on the camera there is. So I wanna make sure the camera body clip is set in where it's supposed to be and all these cables are coming back up. Check to make sure that your holes are lined up. It's really hard to see on camera, but make sure that your bolts go in. There's a few of these large tabs. I'll show you the large tabs real quick on the old one. Make sure that these large tabs index appropriately. These should pop in. Everything should line up. So you're looking for this, this, and this, and there's 4 corners. In addition, you have these clips that will snap in, these 3 at the bottom. And then you have little indexing tabs all across the top. So make sure everything lines up, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so I lied before, because I'm an idiot. These don't index when you affix these 2 parts together. These do, right here, these 4 bolts. And then on top, it's hard to see here, actually you can't see it here, there's some indexing tabs. And down below, there's also some tabs that go in there. If you get those 4 bolts lined up, you're good to go. Just tighten those down, don't over tighten, tighten those down, make sure they're snug. All the other holes that you have around should line up. So you should see this one line up, this one line up, so on and so on and so on. So let's tighten these up real quick. Most of these you can just do hand tight at first. So I am using this Milwaukee tool, this ratchet driver. It doesn't have a ton of power, but for some of this plastic stuff, it does. So you just want to be careful when you put it on, when you tighten things on. I go slow. This is the last screw I didn't talk about. It's right in the middle. It goes straight through, connects both pieces. It's 8 millimeters. Yeah. Just tighten that in there. All right, so a couple other things. This notch here, this is where your fluid hose goes. But more importantly, this little guy, this is the camera plug. Now, it has this little wrap around it for protection, whatever, I don't know. The wrap is the one that actually holds the body clip in place. Now, on the other side of the body clip is this little tab, and it's really hard to put this on here with you seeing it. This camera piece right here, the wrap is the one that actually holds this body clip, but the more interesting part is the camera piece actually slides into that and clips in place, or the camera cable does. So make sure when you do that, that's snapped in place, then you put it in here. It's very, very difficult to do. after you have already put this in place, and then you try to pull the camera cable through. If you don't do this, it's essentially impossible, or I assume, I didn't try it, but I assume it's impossible or very close to impossible to actually make this connection when you put it back on the truck. So make sure that this piece is connected to this top of this body clip. The body clip is put in, and then you put this thing back on. Okay, so 4 screws across the top, 2 screws, 1 in each bottom corner. Make sure everything's lined up. We can put the body clips in here in just a second, but what I want to make sure before I put anything else on is I want to put this bottom trim piece back on. So let's get this bendy guy. I'm just going to start from the center here, and I'm going to line up as much as possible. So I want to show you something. When you line this up, these tabs, they don't go in the middle. They don't go right there. They go on the top. It's really hard to see, especially since there's an arrow that points to the middle. So that's great. This is the first time I've done this, so I'm learning stuff too. So yeah, you're going into the top slots there, and those will slot in place. So I'll put you back up here. You're gonna make sure your painted edges here actually go over the edges. So when you get the grill back on, the 4 screws go in the top of the actual grill mechanism. Not mechanism, but 1, 2, 3, 4. These cables are all back in place. All of them just push in place. Cables wrap like that. Don't forget to put the body clips that hold the cables down in there. They're all pretty easy to snap in place. Just be gentle, don't break them. When this sets back in place, make sure that for your intake here, make sure that your wrap or your cover, whatever this rubbery thing is called, goes between the body, or not the body, the support here and the intake. So it should sit right between. And your body clips go from the intake through this rubbery piece down into the support part. And just make sure make sure all the holes line up, make sure you're good to go. Everything should more or less just fall into place, and everything should be perfect with this one. This one's gonna be really easy.